Now, Nuke, we're going to take you through the process of rotoing a complex organic form. But there's a couple things that I need to set up about roto. And one of the main things is, what is bad roto? So what we're going to work on is this clip here. We're going to roto a human hand. We're going to roto this human hand going through these motions. And on disk, I've included like about 200 some frames of this doing all sorts of different actions. But all you need to do is do about 50. Now, there's a lot of different ideas about roto, and most of them are wrong. They're just flat wrong. And bad roto comes in a couple of different variants. And over the years of teaching, I've seen it all. And these are the three most common mistakes I've seen. Number one is called the amoeba. This is where someone attempts to do a roto like this, and they draw and focus on the outline of it. Now, what's wrong with this? Because, like, you could argue it does the job. It's the outline. That's what you want, correct? Yes. But when the hand goes through motions where this finger now is in a different position than where it was and it crossed over, you're going to have to animate this negative space coming down in and going back out constantly. And when one shape overlaps another shape or disappears behind a shape, it's going to end up creating squirminess where the edge of your roto looks like it's an alive amoeba blobbing all over the place. It's terrible. Never, ever do this. Never, ever do this. Now, the second problem that I've seen with rotos is this guy over here. Select the shape and look at this. Look at how many points there are. There are so many points in this roto, I don't even know where to begin. Oh my God. Look at all these. Now, some people argue, well, it's really detailed. It needs all these control points. Well, they're wrong. It doesn't. It doesn't need that kind of level of detail. What you want to do is you want to use the minimum amount of points to define the shape. And that is a combination of using tangent handles and a density of a point that's appropriate to the shape. When you start putting in too many points like this causes a huge problem. A, it's super dense. B, it's going to take you forever to change the shape from one frame to the next frame to the next frame. It's madness. Never, ever, ever do this. And even if we looked at the other one, you can see the spacing is set that when things are more flat, there's fewer points. When we get down to areas that have more curves to them and changes of direction, we get more and more density of points, more density. Okay? That is the correct way, because then when you're going from one keyframe to another, you only have to move a handful of points. A handful. Haha. It produces a much better animation and it looks more consistent. Okay, so if we can't do that, we can't do the other one. Well, what about this other one? Well, this is a no-no too. This is no, because I have always talked about doing multiple shapes that are appropriate. But some people think that doing multiple shapes means making one shape line up right to the edge of the next shape, as if this is a puzzle, like a jigsaw puzzle, where it's been cut out and it has to meticulously fit together. No, do not do this ever. All right. So if we look at the alpha for this, look at this. You've got little tiny gaps. You've got gaps everywhere. You have to think of what you're rotoing as a physical thing, an entity that is solid, that is with form. And you need to break down the shapes into logical areas. So what we would do is we would break down this hand into the forearm, the palm itself as a big shape. Then we'd do the thumb. We'd do the pinky finger, the ring finger, the middle finger, the pointer finger. We'd do each one of those separately. And if the motion was complex enough, we might even break it down to the various bones and go down to the knuckle and to the next joint and to the last joint and do it in an articulated, jointed fashion. Now here is another example of the type of roto that we're about to do on this shot. Here's another hand, and here are the roto shapes. The roto shapes are designed to overlap, to be the shape of the object regardless of whether you see it or not. For example, look at the pointer finger. Notice how it's tucked behind the thumb underneath the middle finger, and yet the shape for it is a complete finger. The shape of the middle finger goes all the way to the fingertip, even though the fingertip goes underneath the palm of the thumb. Now, this is because when it gets animated and it starts to unfurl, you need to have those shapes move into those other shapes. And it doesn't matter if they're overlapping, because in the end, it produces a solid, clean, articulate mat that is solid and can be used in your compositing in the way you need to. So let's go back to our hand, and we're going to roto that right now. All right, so now we're going to roto the hand. So we're going to go up here, we're going to click on the Bezier tool, and we're going to first define the thumb. And I'm going to click around these edges here. We're going to zoom in, and the idea is that you're going to select areas where you need to break the continuity of the surface. So click, 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 click. And you can see I let that be very linear right there, but if you don't want to go back and make it smooth later, which I always recommend, you can also click and hold the left mouse button, and then you can drag out tangent handles as you go. So you can do it this way. That is an alternative. But I always kind of find it it to be faster for my workflow to just click the basic shape in, select all those points and hit Z, and you get a great approximation of a smooth surface. And then it doesn't take long for me to come back in and adjust the tangent handles, having everything in its place to be able to make those choices of how you're going to make those particular shapes. All right, so we're going to move these points around over here. Now you see the way this area folds in, it's not really necessary to make it detailed into all of these little folds, because this is a overlapping area. You see how this is going to be blending into whatever shape we do down here. So this is a good start frame for that. And I like to do the divide and conquer method, whereby I usually go look at how the frames are going and how much change there is. What you want to do is you want to find frames where something changes its velocity or direction. And you can kind of see the thumb rotates down and then it kind of pauses around frame 60. So we're going to do our next keyframe on frame 60. I'm going to select all of the points. And what happens is you get this selection box. This selection box, once you select all the points, it turns into a transformation box. I can click in the center and move all the points as a whole. And I can also go to the edges and rotate by clicking near the corners. I can also stretch and scale the sides by clicking on one of the top, bottom, left, right areas. So I can do big transformations that way. And you can also do it on smaller subsections. So if you select a smaller section, you can do the exact same thing, or you can just do it down to the point level. Once you do that big move, that's when I'm going to do the adjustments on the individual points. So let's move these points, move them along. And here we're going to tuck that into the thumb. Let's take that membrane of skin between the thumb and the palm. Keep a nice round shape. Bring that down. Bring this one down. And what I'm looking for on these edges is there are approximately like 8 to 10 pixels of anti-aliasing and blurring. And I'm trying to put the line somewhere in between that. But I'm also trying to be consistent frame to frame where the points are located. So like these points that are going around the fingernail on the thumb, each keyframe I'm trying to be very careful to make sure that the same points are going to the same location of the object that we are rotoing. This creates a much better roto that has less crawling. All right, so now we have 2 keyframes and we've gone from 40 to 60. So that's every 20 frames. So now I'm going to go forward another few frames and I'm looking for a change in direction of the thumb, and it really doesn't change again. So let's just go to the last frame and we're going to move it, bring it up. That's where that little fold in the skin that we made was. And then we're going to rotate it around there like that. And let's pull those points that are going to go around the front of the fingernail. Bring these points in and then just kind of massage the shape. A lot of times I'll make these gross moves and then come back with selecting a bunch of them and hitting Z, and you'll see all those tangents kind of create that smooth curve. There we go. Then let's place this up here, this point there. Okay, so now we've got 3 keyframes and we're following those directional changes. So those are a really good way to set it up. But let's go now to the beginning and we're going to do the divide and conquer, which is we've got a keyframe at 40, keyframe at 60. Let's go right in between at 50 and make it in between. And we're just going to nudge everything up to the places where we know where the consistency is. Fingernails, fingertips, rounded edges. Try to be as consistent as possible. The more consistency you keep, the less keyframes you'll need because it'll create a much smoother, much better overall roto. Okay. Now we're going to go every 5 frames, and you can see on this key in between, it's a lot closer. So we're just going to continue to divide the frames that we have and make smaller and smaller adjustments. That, like that. Okay. There we go. And now we'll do 45. And notice how 45 has a bunch of areas that are already in really good placement. So you don't have to move the ones that are already in line. You just make the slight adjustments for the things that have moved, like that. And now I'm going to go even further. I'm going to go into there, and it looks like that one's okay. This one needs another keyframe right here. But that's the trick, is you can find places that don't need a keyframe by doing a divide. Split the difference. There we go. And I know Roto seems very tedious, and it is, but it's something that is important for you to know, important for you to be good at, because it's a fundamental part of the compositor's job. Now, while it's true that at a large studio, we often farm Roto out because it's more cost effective to have a junior or a company that specializes in Roto to do it at their cost than it is to pay somebody doing Roto like this at a high dollar rate per hour. It just doesn't make sense. So a lot of times at a big studio, we farm Roto out and get it back as rendered image sequences, which is another thing about why a Roto is the same as a matte, the same as anything else. As long as it's pixels, it can be used as Roto, it can be used as a matte, it can be used as a mask. It has no difference in the source of where it came from. It's all a different name depending on how you use it. So you can see we've got pretty good results right here. Now, every once in a while on the playback, you're going to see like a big pop. And that's because the overlays are not always in sync with the viewer displaying the underlying image. So when reviewing Roto, it's best to render it out or let it buffer, let it play back. All those things will help. Now let's do this other part over here. So again, 60 to 90. Let's go right in the middle to frame 75, and we'll just make our adjustments just like this, like this, like that. Perfecto. So when you're doing the Roto, it does seem like it's not as doesn't take a lot of critical thinking about it. I find it very therapeutic. I find it a way I can tune out. I can listen to music. I can listen to a podcast, and the time just flies by because it is a time-consuming task. But again, it's very necessary, very important skill. And like I mentioned before, even if a big company that you work for is farming out that Roto, a lot of times when the Roto comes back, it may not be the Roto you wished for. Or it is, but you forgot to say, oh, I needed that part done. And there really isn't time or extra budget for it to go back. So you have to be able to take what you have and adapt with it. And that's all part of the job. So many times you have to be flexible and you still have to be able to do roto. But it's actually not bad. I like it. I don't want to do it for forever, but it is a nice walk in the park. Okay. Let's see. There we go. All right. So let's go over here. Again, we're going to split it. So we're going to just move it down because you can see it's almost the exact shape. It's just not in the right spot. Same with this one. That's pretty good. Just move that. And there are other softwares that we're actually going to look at in tracking, such as Mocha Pro and Silhouette, that actually help do roto faster and more efficiently. But you should always know how to do it straight out of Nuke. All right, we're almost done with our thumb. Just a few more clicks. Let's check that frame. That tip needs to come down. Let's check there. Push that up a little bit. And let's check there. That's a little off. Only looks like the finger though. So we'll just kind of nudge that around like that. There we go. Okay. So you can see if I hit the M key, that's going to overlay the alpha on top of our thumb, and we can kind of see how it's going to flow. So let it buffer. I can see a little flash in there. You see that right there? Let's find out what frame that is. Let's go back. There's one frame, and you can see that frame right there. It is not quite covering it. So we want to just move that up a little bit. That. And I also saw another one. Okay. Probably this one right here. We'll just kind of just nudge those points a little bit. Okay, so that should look a lot better. All right, so I'm going to hit the M key again, which will turn the mask overlay off. Great, so now we have our thumb. Select the thumb, go over here. We're going to change it to thumb. Great. Now we're going to go and now do the palm, the arm, and every other finger and get that done. But since that will probably take me about an hour, let's watch that with the little music. Well, now that the roto's all done, you can see all the different layers and how, notice how the pinky finger back here maintains its shape even when it's not being seen. That's because it's going to just make a white image in the end. So it doesn't matter if it's overlapping or hidden. If I had to make this negative space and move this in and out through the amoeba method of just doing the outline, it would be insanity. I got this whole thing done in less than an hour, and it's so much more simpler, faster, and more efficient to do it through this method. Breaking down your shapes, keeping good organization, and splitting the keyframes and going from every 20 frames, every 10 frames, every 5 frames, every 3 frames to every 1 frame if needed to update those shapes and keep the consistency of where those points are going to do the best results that you can have. And in the end, you'll have a decent roto that will work for you. Look at the alpha, and you can see that it's good and solid and clean. And now we can use this in our composites.